Hello, everyone. This is Fariha from the Fangirls Assemble. You may know me from the Fangirls as a live TV show, like TV show. Yes, we have a TV show. Fangirls Live, the YouTube show that we do in the Omnibus Collectors channel. And we are kind of doing something kind of nifty and cool over here that we are doing on our own channel where we're going to be putting some extra content. And as part of that, we are planning on doing some reviews of running series that we are recently reading. So part of that, our first choice was Hellblazer, the 300 issues Vertigo series that kind of ran between late 80s to early 2000. And to help me talk about this mega marathon of all things John Constantine Hellblazer is Bethany. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for joining me. And this is your first time doing something like this, right?
Yeah, my first time definitely like on camera.
You're gonna be fine. We're gonna just have like a quick chat about Hellblazer. Bethany and I have been kind of talking about it over the message, so we're very excited about this. So, can you get us started with what we're gonna be talking about today?
Yeah, so we've been binge reading issues of Constantine, the Hellblazer series by starts off with Jamie Delano
Right.
and then goes into other, like a lot of people actually started writing it later on in the series. So
Right. So we're going to be doing just the first 40 issues that is written by Jamie Delano today.
mhm.
And so what's your experience has been with John Constantine? Did you know about him from like previous TV series, movies,
Yeah.
or anything like that?
So I really like the DC animated movies, and I watched the Justice League Dark, and I
Ooh,
was like, okay, I really love the magic like anti-hero that they had for him, so I thought that was really cool. And then recently I watched that what was the more recent Constantine? It was like something City of
City of
Demons, I
Demons?
think. Yeah. So
Yeah.
watched that too. So
Okay. Yeah, it's like City of Demons is kind of really dark and
mm,
weird that you wouldn't
yeah.
expect. Like that is not for kids. That is like a very mature, rated R,
Yeah.
gore and bloody, like thing. And I think it's also voiced by Matt Ryan, who
Ah,
plays him in like I think the Arrowverse.
okay.
I think I'm not very much into Arrow, like but very much into DC. As you can see, I'm mostly into Marvel, you
Yeah.
know. But I do read DC and stuff. But so
Mhm.
for me, Constantine has always been a very interesting character to me because I knew nothing about him. I just saw a picture of this like this guy with like smoke and like the trench coat and blonde hair and his English, and I'm like I'm into him. I and then I kind of like just similar to you, I saw some like animated series and stuff. I'm like, ooh, tell me more. So and then I'm like, well, what better way to kind of get started than reading the comics where he's from.
Right.
So this is that's kind of where we kind of just started talking and came up with the idea of reading the series. So you did read Swamp Thing,
Yeah.
where he actually debuted because he was created by Alan Moore, and I'm really sorry that I'm forgetting the artist's name. And he first debuted in Swamp Thing. So, what has been your kind of like feeling about him when you read him in first in Swamp Thing?
In Swamp Thing, I instantly liked him. I already kind of knew a little bit about his personality. I knew he's kind of known as like a lovable asshole, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So, and then reading, I read a little bit past Alan Moore's run, right? So I read the Swamp Thing. It's written by Rick Veitch, is I think how you say his last name. Volume 7 was by him, and that actually explains quite a bit about Constantine. And I've heard Volume 8 has more, but I haven't read that yet. So
Okay. So did you kind of get the idea that, because when he first showed up in Swamp Thing, I was under the impression that he's very powerful magician and like, very like he's who's who. He knows a lot. And and then he kind of guides, Swamp Thing into figuring out, like, fighting with the Parliament and all that. Did you get that feeling when you come to his solo run?
The solo run, I don't know. It's hard because I think there was a lot of really powerful villains that he had in there. So maybe that was a little harder in contrast to like compare to make it. I don't know. I definitely think you see his weaknesses. How about that? And his vices.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So, so it's like, because that's kind of one thing that initially kind of shocked me when I went into volume 1, because I'm like, wait, is this baby Constantine? What happened to that whole suave, slick, like, hey,
Yeah.
love, I need you I can't do a British accent. But it's like, we need to get this done, and then he's just kind of more of a background, just kind of an enigmatic character. And I think that's the character I fell in love with. But then when it's like his own series and you're hearing his own thought and stuff, I felt like a little bit of like that mystery was disappeared, and I'm like, oh, you're not that cool.
He's definitely a mess. Like, his apartment's a mess. Everything about him's kind of a mess in Jamie Delano's run. So I definitely agree with that.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, he must stink a lot too.
I mean, he does chain smoke all day, so probably. Yeah.
I mean, in a previous episode callback. Well, if you want to see our live show, the link is down below in the description. In one of the episodes, I talked about like one of my pet peeves about characters stinking, like because Wolverine, for example, is known to be stinking.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm like, this guy chain smokes way too much. He's
Yeah, and drinks a lot and all that. Yeah, so yeah, he's probably
he's a bit of a mess. So, all right, so we're going to be talking spoilers because this is an old comic, and I feel like we talked about it just before the show starting. There isn't much to talk about without spoilers, and even if we do spoil it, I feel like you still need to want to go and read it because it's not anything massive. Like, it's not that nothing that changes the experience of the story. So we are going to kind of go ahead with and talk about like each volume individually and kind of give our opinion, what we thought about it. So first is volume 1, that is Original Sin. Oh, by the way, DC has been doing very good about putting out this thick, chunky threads. So far, I think 21 of them came out. That has gotten us up to issue 250, and it's pretty much just in uninterrupted appearances of John Constantine, and it's I really like it because the paper stock is like old timey matte like newspaper stock, which kind of keeps the old the classic vibe and the coloring and everything. So it's pretty neat actually. Like, if you want to go, there's like a thin trades as well, but the thin trade doesn't have the side stories that are happening and stuff. So if you really want to buy them, this is the way to go, I think, like short of like oversized hardcover and stuff. And it's pretty cheap as well. This first one is also $20, but you can get them cheaper for in stock trades or other places. So I do recommend that. So Bethany, why don't you get us started? What was your thought on volume 1?
So I really did like volume 1. I think, like we were talking about with volume 7 of Swamp Thing, I definitely think it wrapped up that as well, kind of towards the end. But in the beginning, you see a little bit of an intro of John. And like you said, he's very different from what you think of in Swamp Thing, because in Swamp Thing, I feel like he's going back and forth between, I guess, England is where he's at and the US. So it kind of shows that in the first Hellblazer, which I thought was cool, because you see like, oh, he's interacting with Swamp Thing back and forth a little bit too. So but yeah, and I'm trying to think what else. I know. Oh, one thing I wanted to say is a lot of the volumes are named. Each one is like named after the main plot. I feel like so. Like Original Sins is you see a lot of his ghosts, kind of like haunting him. Do you remember that? So, so I really liked that aspect of it. And then at the end, after Jamie Delano, you get Swamp Thing wraps up. So you see what happened between Abby and him and Swamp Thing. So that's kind of crazy. And I did like that.
Right. And the thing is, like, I feel like when it first started, this one, like, we're gonna talk about the later volume in a bit, but this is where the most supernatural things were happening. Like, there were actual monsters, ghosts, like, and you kind of see he's a bit of a prick because his friend, he literally, like, kind of kill his friend in order to save something, and he doesn't really care. He has a girlfriend, or like someone he's interested in, love interest. You can't even call it girlfriend or lover because they were like, their relationship was weird. And then someone tells him, like, no, you need to sacrifice her because she's going to do something weird, and she's like, okay. Like,
yeah, so you really see like his moral compass. You definitely see that like in these volumes, because you realize that he's willing to not intervene in a lot of things that I felt like, I was like, oh my God, please help that person. And he wouldn't do it. And I was like, well, I guess that's just him.
Interesting thing though, because typically you see anti-heroes, the definition of anti-heroes, like if you look at Punisher, for example, that they just kill bad people and they're like, oh, I'm going to kill all bad people in order to save good. He is more like, I don't wanna.
I'm not gonna involve myself. Yeah. So I was gonna say, I think that's why that was cool that they added all the ghosts, because you see him starting to feel guilty and kind of like breaking down about some of the stuff that he regrets doing.
Right. And like that's like, so there is some progression about that, because over here I feel like in volume 1 he's more careless and is like, whatever, and all these things happening. And then also, like, and this is probably my, like, I don't know much about like England in late 80s, like, that's like, so you do see a lot of England in late 80s in this, like especially with the post Margaret Thatcher, like, there's like AIDS panic, gay panic, like a lot of that ideas are here as well, especially for AIDS. I think that comes more in volume 2, that it's like a big plot point that kind of shows up here. Like, what was your like, what did you think about that?
So some of the politics I kind of understood. I knew about like Margaret Thatcher, and I knew she was like in the 80s and stuff. Was it Original Sins where, this was the first one. There's one where I know like the demons were taking advantage of the political like landscape, which I thought was really funny, but I think that's volume 2. And basically they were taking advantage of some of the greedy people that were existing in politics. And so that, I thought that was kind of funny what he was doing with that. And it was definitely a lot of, if you don't know anything about British politics, you might want to Google it because it's kind of confusing.
It can be. And I think it's also like a lot of, so it's first person narrative because it's like Constantine kind of talking about it. And there's a lot of stream of conscience. I think it's stream of conscience, is that the word? Like, in a lot of philosophical thoughts and stuff that, I'll be honest, like it kind of was going over my head and I was just kind of through that. Did you have the same experience?
I did, especially in volume 2 and 3. I feel like I had to skim a lot because like, it's kind of like with poetry, which I'm like, I'm sure it's beautiful and all, but I don't really understand the deep meaning he was trying to go with it. So I did kind of skim a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, sure. And actually, I have to check that if Jamie Delano, if he's British, and he is. And he came up with the same time when there was like I think it's called the British invasion of the comics, where it's like Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman, all these people were like, those are the 2 I remember. Oh, Garth Ennis. Who later, like they kind of came to like American comics and kind of took over. And I think DC Vertigo was like the one. RIP. We found out this week that they're gonna be shutting them down. Like was kind of like the cornerstone for that, like where they came with all their ideas and stuff. And Jamie Delano happens to be one of them. But yeah, we're gonna talk about more about what did we think overall, and then what did you think about the art though? Like
I loved it because it reminded me a lot of Saga of the Swamp Thing, and I know like some of the penciling is the same person, at least for the last issues and stuff. So that was really cool. Oh yes, and the full print pages where at first it was a little hard for me to tell like which direction I'm supposed to read, because the panels connect on certain ones.
Right.
But yeah.
Oh, trust me, so many times I would be just reading them top to bottom or
Yeah.
like, this way. I'm like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. And then also at the same time, they're talking about like stream of conscious kind of thing. And you're like, wait,
Yeah.
okay, okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Like,
So you're not sure what
I'm reading it
direction.
wrong. I'm reading it wrong. So even though I am not a big fan of this type of art, like I'm because I started reading comics about like since 2015, I'm more used to the modern art. For
Hmm.
some reason, this art works. Like
Yeah.
it really works in this, and I need to find out who. It's John Ridgway, Alfredo Alcala, Rick Bitch, which I think your dude from the Swamp Thing, Tom
Hmm.
Mandrake, Great Evans, and Jim McCarthy are the artists that it's kind of like all over the place. There is no consistent artist, but
Yeah.
it's thematically consistent though.
Yeah. And I was just gonna say, I know Rick Veitch. I think he does some art. I don't know if it's pencil or if he does inking, but I know he did do some of the art. So I don't know if it's consistent. Like, but yeah, look wise it is.
Right, it looks the same. Is the thing,
Hmm.
like, okay, maybe it's different artists, but I think each of them kind of kept up with it.
Yeah.
Although in some instances I can't, like, I won't be able to, like, I do remember in some instances, I think it's a later volume, John looks really ugly.
I was gonna say that. So volume 2, I don't know if you remember, I actually made a post about it. That little girl in volume 2. I don't know what was going on with that picture. The art was so goofy, and it wasn't through the whole comic. It was just like kind of in the first half. And in the
Right.
second half it looked polished, but I was like, I don't know what's happening to her.
I mean, that girl, I'm like, no, I mean, 80s was tough because that girl looked like a woman. And she was supposed to be 15.
Yeah, that was confusing.
I was like,
I don't know.
what is this? So
Yeah.
the volume ends with, oh, and also this volume also have Etrojan, who's my favorite character of
Yes.
all time.
Yeah.
And I would be saying though, I don't think Mr. Delano knew how to rhyme.
Because yeah, he's supposed to have like the rhyming.
Yeah, because he always speaks in rhymes,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of the artists kind of try, like a lot of the writers try to get away with making him rhyme by saying that I'm not feeling like rhyming. I'm like,
They get lazy with it.
lazy, sir, Matt or
Yeah.
Madam. But here, he just didn't even try
Yeah.
because I was
Yeah.
trying to read it in a rhyming. I'm like, oh, this is not rhyming.
And it was pretty short, like the amount he was in there though, right? I don't remember him
Right,
being there.
right.
Yeah.
So the thing is that the issue ends with, as you said, with like kind of like ending of Swamp Thing and over here,
Hmm.
which is a bizarre storyline. So I knew about it,
Uh-huh.
this happens, but my God. So do you want to tell us what happens?
Okay, yeah. So I definitely recommend if you want some sort of like context to what's happening, definitely at least read volume 7. I haven't read 8, but it goes directly from volume 7. So as long as you read that, you should be fine. But I remember you asked me like why did Swamp Thing and John, why does it seem like they don't like each other?
Right.
Yeah. So Swamp Thing took over John's body. I think it's kind of shown in the
Right.
end, so that him and Abby Arcane could have a baby.
Right.
So they agreed to this. Everything was cool, right? Which I actually kind of thought was cool because Swamp Thing was really worried about like Abby's consent and the whole thing, right? And she doesn't like John at all, so she's
Right.
worried that he's gonna like come to like in the middle of what they're doing, right?
Right. In the middle of getting naughty, let's just say.
Yeah. So they kind of show that in the end of Hellblazer Volume 1 where he does kind of come to towards the end. And
Right.
that really messes with her head. And then Swamp Thing also goes through this whole like existential crisis thing where he starts like forming himself into all these different superheroes because I guess he doesn't think he's good enough for her. He felt like he's not human enough.
Right.
So that's the one thing he can't provide her as being like a human. So
Right.
and then I guess because of that, he resents John. That's pretty much what I felt like it alluded to, is that he just resents John because that's the one thing he can't give Abby, I guess.
Right. So
So,
in I remember that from the Alan Moore's run,
mhm.
Abby and him, like Swamp Thing, they kind of consummate their relationship by eating fruits.
Yeah, the yams or something off his back. And she like trips, like, there's a lot of psychedelic, like,
Yeah.
druggy trips. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then then you're like, Okay, I guess.
There's one, actually I think that's in the volume 7 where she's literally just on his back and like digging dirt, and then like flowers come up, and I'm like, okay, I guess that was supposed to be something. It's kind of weird.
So and then over here, like he just takes over his body. So and then kind of takes him to a tattoo shop to get him
Yeah.
tattoo on his butt.
Yeah, that was so funny and weird. He was like getting back at John, I guess, by like getting, and he like John can't see his own butt, I guess. He doesn't know there's a tattoo.
Yeah, because it comes back later. Because
Yeah.
what's a tattoo? And it's like, what tattoo?
Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention is you remember how he's got like the demon blood, right? Is it nerve or something?
Right.
So I don't know. This is just my own personal thoughts. Is that gonna somehow mess up their baby because he's got like some demon blood in there? I don't know.
You know what? Keep reading and get back to us. Report back.
Because we don't know.
Out. But yeah, so I mean, and the thing is, like, he kind of had this, like, you know, like John, like, he's a bit of a, like, you know, sorry person over here, as we said, kind of like not together and stuff. But he has a very human, emotional moment at the end where he's like, why didn't you ask? I would say yes.
Yeah, definitely. Are you talking about?
I feel like that kind of brings up a lot of issues about consent, because are we okay because it's a gender swapped, like it's like a man's body? Because if this was a woman's body being taken over and stuff, this story would read really, really.
And that was one thing I am kind of glad they showed a little bit more, is like they showed how it kind of messed Abby up after the fact, and I'm glad they did show that, because I felt like that is kind of a mind trip. I don't know if I'd be able to do that. You know?
Right, because, you know, she's like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, we're gonna be doing this. Like, she kind of psychs herself up and then unpsychs herself, and then, you know, but then they did have a very good post, like, you know, kind of a discussion about it, because they kind of go on, like, you know, a friendly, get to know each other, go on dance and stuff like
drunk.
that.
I said they got drunk.
They got drunk, and then I was like, oh, so this is when it's probably gonna happen. But no, nothing happens. They just get drunk, and, you know, they have a very friendly thing. And at that point, John says, like, you just should have asked. I would have happily, like, you know, contributed to this. And which comes back later as well. And but the thing is, like, I was kind of the whole time I was thinking, I'm like, this is not a good, like, you know, this is not right.
It was weird. And also, like, I kind of didn't like Swamp Thing's behavior in the whole thing, because he seemed really weird about it, but I don't know.
And I did not read Swamp Thing past Alan Moore's, but the thing is, like, I feel like this Swamp Thing is a little bit like, you know, like quipping, and then he's not as introspective as he was before. So I'm like, well, I guess Swamp Thing had a little bit too much. I mean, I don't know. He's changed.
Yeah, he gets like a little, I guess the best way to say, he gets a little pissy. So, especially with John, like, I don't really know exactly what caused him to be that way with John, but I definitely think there was a change in their relationship. He just was kind of not okay with him, but I don't know. I think he feels used by John. I think that's the best way I can say it.
Yeah. Well, John did kind of, like, you know, kind of held back information, pushed him into things, and oftentimes, like, you know, he wasn't very, like, he's like, no, I need you to go do this, like, you know, and then I kind of get that, but still, that tattoo was not good.
That was kind of funny.
It was hilarious, but then I'm like, wait, is that you? All right, so that's kind of like a volume 1. We both liked it, like, right? So volume 1 kind of takes us up to issue 9, and also like the Swamp Thing materials from Swamp Thing 67 and 68, I believe. So kind of clears it up. So then it brings us to volume 2, which is The Devil You Know, and this has issue. This is actually a smaller one. So this is issues 10 to 13, 4 issues, then 1 annual, and then like the Horrorist, the miniseries, issue 1 and 2. What was your overall feeling about this one?
So if this helps describe it, on Goodreads I rated it like a 2. So, and I'm not usually like very harsh with ratings, but I thought I can't remember. Was it the first part that was really slow in that one? I think so. And then the
Yeah.
end kind of picked up a little bit. I liked that. And then all of a sudden they did the horrorist thing you're talking about. I didn't really get much out of that.
You know what? You and I are completely in agreement of that. So I did give it 3 out of 5.
That's good.
And so like, so you gave 2 out of 5. So in Goodreads, 3 out of 5 is I liked it, right? Like it was
Yeah.
okay.
I would do a 2.5. Because there's no 2.5 thing.
Right. Right. So you kind of you went down, I went up. So for me, it's also 2.5.
Okay.
We do learn a lot about Newcastle, like
Mhm.
what happened in Newcastle, because that's kind of his driving force from from very beginning. Like you hear about Newcastle in here, and you hear about Newcastle a lot in TV shows and stuff.
Mhm.
But I was a little unimpressed by the Newcastle event here.
Yeah. So that's what I was gonna say. Like remember how it says like each volume is based off of the plot, right? So the first one he's haunted by all those people from Newcastle, which were all his friends and stuff. And then in this one,
We're all dead now.
that was really rough. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm not usually like put off by stuff like that, but it was just rough because you see what happens to the little girl, and it's like I don't know, it's a little brutal.
It is, and it's one of those. Also, another was the thing that, like those people died because he decided to take a passive. He was like, I'm not gonna be involved.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
but the thing is, like, it also doesn't show, because this is something that I was kind of hoping that they will show, that how did he got magic, like how he became a magician, because I thought that was something that will be discussed over here, but he's already a magician, and he's like in his late teens, and he's still not using it, and because of that people died. So it's like, what's his deal?
Yeah, and so like the only thing I saw is the way it was kind of explained is he just studied magic from when he was a kid. That's all I really saw. So I don't know. Like
Yes,
where he was.
so that's one of the things I wasn't very sure about. Like I wanted to kind of ask you, like, did I miss something, that he like he doesn't have an inner power. He just studied magic.
Yeah. So in volume 4, they go a little bit into it because you find out about him as like a teenager, I guess. Like, but they don't really say anything. They just say that he studied it. He had all these books, and he was just doing stuff with magic. That's pretty much it.
Right. And the thing is, like, yeah. So then, the annual, I did not care for that. Like that whole that kind of takes back to like the King Arthur and stuff.
Oh, yeah. That was weird.
It's a cool concept because they kind of try to show that he is a descendant of King Arthur, because if it's English, obviously he's either King Arthur and that's it. There's no other delineation. Like I think now it would be Harry Potter, but back then Harry Potter wasn't there, so it was like King Arthur. So they try to do all of this, but it's so gross.
Yeah. Do you think that was maybe them trying to explain like his lineage or something, like how he's magic, but then like you don't really see it with anybody else in his family, so I don't really.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like because I was like, oh, okay, so that explains. I was so sure he's from Merlin, right? But he's not.
Yeah.
He's descendant of King Arthur.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, King Arthur was
magic? Yeah.
And then, even then, there's like, the stream of con, like just goes on and on, and you're like, oh, please stop. Sorry.
Yeah. I definitely felt that way. I think that's why I gave it such a 2-star rating, because even though it did wrap up some stuff like it with his past, I don't know, it was a little too out there, I guess, for me. Like mentally, like you said, the stream of conscious is the best description I can think of just what is he trying to say with all that?
Yeah, like what's the point? What are you trying to say, sir? Like, what are you trying to say? And over here also we see a lot more of politics in terms of the AIDS panic that kind of comes up, because one of his friends is dying of AIDS, and that's kind of like an important plot point. And I think talk about we nowadays we hear a lot about comics, like politics in my comics and stuff. Like, oh my god, there was a lot of politics in comics here.
It's always been that way, yeah. Like any of the 80s stuff.
And it doesn't feel very organic though, because I felt like it was Jamie Delano is trying to say his opinion through the characters versus character saying something. Did you feel that way?
I know a lot of people think that it's preachy. Some of it I did feel like it was a little much. I did appreciate that he was trying to show, like, because he's got those like skinheads as an example who were like being racist. So he's got stuff like that, and then he's got the like you said, the AIDS panic and just different political issues. It did definitely feel like he was pushing his agenda, but I think it might have been an issue, like, because with Vertigo, I feel like they were trying to be more adult comics and also be more, I don't want to say offensive, but it was definitely against what the mainstream was like typically
controversial. They were trying to, right.
Yeah. So I kind of got maybe that was the vibe he was going for.
Right. I think the art does take a little bit of weird turn in here.
Yeah.
I feel like this is where it kind of starts to, because volume 1 was kind of like, great all around in terms of art and stuff. But this is where things start to go a little wonky. There's a lot of yellow. I'm like, oh God, because and then also talk about John being ugly. Oh my God. Like,
maybe it's like the pacing, I think, would probably be the issue I had with it, because there were some parts that went fast, but most of it was pretty slow, I thought. And
right. And then they kind of also moved away from the whole, because previous issue was mostly 1 to 2 issue part story arc, and then go, but here they were trying to go for a little bit long term, which we're going to talk about next in volume 3, because but the thing is, there's this whole thing about nuclear attack, like nuclear is our enemy, like nuclear weapon is our enemy kind of thing like that, like nuclear energy, nuclear weapon. I'm like, sir, that's not true. Take it here. That is not true, what you're trying to say.
Was that the one, I can't remember if that was volume 2 or 3, where he's on like the beach?
Yeah. Look at this. Oh, gross.
I was so confused and not understanding like what was going on, because I was like, wait, did everybody die?
Right? And the thing is, he actually has a child who's like 2-headed seal.
Oh, I hated that, actually.
I'm like,
look, that alone could give it a 2-star.
I'm like, oh no. And then it was like, so the reason that this is like the Jamie, like Mr. Delano trying to push his his own agenda, because it was all a dream. He wakes up, it's all a dream. And it's like an issue just to show the horror of nuclear power.
Right. But it was like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Ooh, you know what, though? I think, I do remember in volume 7 of Swamp Thing, they talked about Chernobyl. And you know how that's like a popular show right now. So I felt like it was a big reference. So I'm like, okay, what if that's kind of what he was going with, was like
and it's actually around the same time, because Chernobyl happens in 86, correct? Like, yeah. So, and this is 88. So that is now I love this.
Because it might have been like the fallout of it, not necessarily like,
right. Like, no, that is very true. But then, but there was like, and I think this is like a very much of like that era's comic, where it's like you see all these people going about their life completely unconnected, and then it all comes together, and then you're like, whoa, like, a lot of that.
I think, if you don't have any reference for the 80s, it would be probably hard to get into, I think. But if you know some of what happened, like I said, like Chernobyl, or like stuff with Margaret Thatcher, and just some kind of small amount of British politics, it'll like make sense. But
right. So then what was it? Well, there was another point I wanted to make as well, but nope, I forgot. Okay, so that brings us to the last 2 issues, the Horrorist. I have no idea what the hell that was.
Yeah. Do you remember who it said who wrote that? Because it wasn't him, right? It was somebody else.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Hang on. We can find that out for here. No, it is written by him.
Oh. I thought it was someone else.
No, written by him.
Honestly, yeah.
You feel that it's written by someone else, because there's not a lot of stream of consciousness talk over here.
Yeah.
Very straightforward story. And it's a very dark, very weird story. And I don't know what the point of this. Like, this girl, like, she's from Africa. She was brought in as like adopted, and she just allows people to be nasty to her. And at the end, he's kind of liberated by having sex with John.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff with that, where
This is the second time, by the way, if you're keeping score, this is the second time he does this.
Yeah, it's like, okay, the only way I can describe it is I know like sometimes in the occult, like in our world, right, they talk about like sex magic and stuff. I think that the author was trying to allude to that.
Oh, like, tell me more about this.
So basically, I don't know exactly, but I know that there's actual references like in occult magic, in our, not just in comic books, where it talks about using sex as a vessel for stuff. So I think that's kind of what he was trying to do.
Oh, that he was overusing that.
Definitely.
This volume as well, though, supernatural elements kind of goes away because I don't remember anything that is like a monster or ghost or any of that happening. It's all like real life things.
Yeah, and I think he was like some of it pushing his own politics, but also trying to make the reader think about certain things, and it's definitely a more
political.
Yeah.
So you gave it 2, I gave it 3, but we kind of both was like 2.5 around. Oh, yeah. What did you give volume 1 though?
Volume 1, I think I gave it 3.5 or a 4. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I gave it at 4. Like I put it at 4, and I was very enthusiastic about it. I'm like, ooh, and then it kind of
It was a good start, though, for sure.
Yeah, it was a good start, and but even though I was like, oh, okay, so this is where did the sexy Constantine go? Like,
Yeah. Well, kind of what we're talking about. I do think he definitely tries to create him as like a ladies' man. He's got a new girl like every issue. For volume.
Yeah. But then at the same time, like, which you bring up a good point. I'm like, who are these ladies?
Yeah.
Like, why are they attracted to this guy? Like,
that's a good question.
Like, I mean, I'm attracted to the movie version of him. Like, when I say movie, I don't mean that Keanu Reeves movie. I mean the animated version. Like there's like a lot of mystery to him, and he's like very cheeky and all that. But this one, I'm like, this one stings a lot.
Yeah,
it stings a lot. All right, so that brought us to issue volume 3.
Yes,
which is called The Fear Machine, and this kind of takes us from issue 14 to issue 22. Now we're no longer doing the 1 to 2 story arc. This is one story.
Yeah.
In like 10 or however many, I can't count, like very long issues that I felt every single page off.
Yeah, it actually kind of put me in a little bit of a slump because like most of the issues I was reading in like a day or 2, right? But with this volume, it's like 3, almost 4 days.
I mean, I literally read it like, I was reading every other word, to the point where towards the end, I was reading every other bubble. Like, I'm like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters.
Yeah.
It's over with. And, oh my God. So do you want to tell us about this?
So, okay, the first half, I definitely did not really care for very much. And it introduces some of his, we're talking about like the hippie team that he met up with. Yeah. And I had to kind of look it up. Yeah. I had to kind of look it up. So apparently they're a group of traveling people that were kind of tapping into their like psychic abilities. So that's why you see like the little girl, she's got something going on with her. And then one of the main guys at the camp. So yeah, it kind of goes into that. But I don't think it was explained very well. Like I said, I had to look that up. I didn't really feel like it was explained super well.
And also, like, we forgot to mention that he's on the run because of some, like he was accused. He was like someone comes back to take revenge on him and ends up killing his landlady and his flatmate. So he's on the run for that, and because of that, he kind of goes and joins up this nomadic hippie group, and who are like all into psychedelic and stuff. And then, but the thing is, even with that, like talk about ladies' man, we see him, with a lady just before. He's on the run, by the way. But you know what? We're gonna stop by for a quick shag, and then he kind of joins them up, grows a beard. For the first ever time in my life, I was not attracted to a bearded man. Look at it.
It was pretty awkward beard, and it looks like he has a mullet. That was the one thing was like, no, that's not.
No. So then their kid, she has like this psychic power. She gets captured and taken to this thing, government facility, and that's not even explained really well what was going on.
Yeah.
They're trying to make this fear machine, which is making people's worst nightmare come true and stuff. And that was really scary and stuff. But
Yeah.
at that point, I stopped caring.
So you don't really see the fear machine until the end, though, because you see like they captured the little girl, right? And I think they were trying to make it seem like they were cops, but they weren't. They were part of this like Freemason or secret organization, right? And then they
contractor for military, something like that.
Yeah, and they tried to make it seem like, oh, we're the cops and we're just taking you in because you're loitering, I guess. I don't know.
Like there is some he also joins up with police, old friends and stuff, and also like a running theme that every one of his friends dies a horrible death. Like that continues in here too. And then and a lot of the time because he's not there, like he doesn't do anything.
Yeah, and sometimes it's frustrating because I feel like it's stuff that he kind of pushes them into doing, but then he isn't there to help them when stuff goes bad, so.
Right, and the thing is, and this is the most ridiculous plot point and stuff, because it's like he's somewhere and then the girl runs away and then they just meets up in a in a diner and you're like, oh my god, like, you are alive, and I'm like, wait, what?
Like,
and
he didn't do anything.
Yeah, by the way, he left her mother saying that, oh, I'm gonna find her. Doesn't do very much actively to look for her.
Yeah, and that whole thing was weird too, because you see, like, I did kind of like the aspect of the secret organization was using that little girl to pull out people's worst fears and stuff.
Right.
Because then you get that really creepy monster that's like, it's like a bunch of monsters combined.
Right.
I think there's a full spread of it.
Like, over here, I have like one picture of that. I had it bookmarked.
I love the art for that. I think let me see. Look up page 210, because I did write that down.
Oh, 210? Okay.
Yeah. It's like a full spread, I think, or something.
Ooh. Oh, yeah. Well, but look at that. Ugh.
Yeah.
Gross.
And he's supposed to be actually pretty powerful, and I don't know if she created him on accident or if she just, like, summoned him. It doesn't really explain that.
Right. Like, nothing is explained properly. Yeah. And also, Zed, his girlfriend from Volume 1, or, not girlfriend or whatever, who he infected with his demon blood, semen.
Yeah.
Could not become the vessel for the angel or Antichrist or whatever. Back. And
she's got a weird haircut.
And the hippies meet up with her.
Yeah.
Which happens in like a spin, like, it makes your head spin because it goes so fast. And you're like, wait, what? What is going on? And then in the end, he gets into a threesome with those two ladies and defeats the monster.
But see, do you remember how they kind of made it seem like, oh, you have to do this for us to be able to create that? What was it that happened? They made like an egg or something,
right?
They made like a weird baby egg, like instantly out of Zed, and then it turns into like a dragon, I guess. And I was like, okay,
there was a baby egg.
None of that made any sense.
And he's like a passive participant in all of this. That's what bothered me the most. Like, it's not that he's coming up with this idea. It's not like someone's telling him. His friends have died because he wasn't there to protect them. And he's just like, oh, I guess. Like, and you're like, what?
Yeah, all this stuff happening to him. That is a really good point. It seems like it just kind of happens passively. Like, he's not really involved in it much. He just kind of walks up onto it, and then stuff happens.
And he's also like a bit cowardly. He's like, I don't want to be part of this.
Yeah, I
don't. Like, whoa, sex involved? I'll be part of this.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So yeah, that was like, and honestly, I like, it sounds like I'm surprised that I actually remembered this much, because at the end I was like, what did I just read?
Yeah, Volume 2 and 3, especially the end of Volume 2 and then the first part of Volume 3, I was like, I hope I'm going to be able to remember some of that, because it didn't hold much importance, I guess.
And the stream of consciousness just keeps going. going.
Mhm.
Going.
And, you know, maybe some people understand it, but I felt like I did have to kind of look that up because I was just like, what is he trying to explain with that, you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah, it wasn't good. It wasn't good. But a great concept though, right?
yeah, oh, definitely, because that was really creepy, like I said at the end with the fear machine and how I felt really bad because it was people that, because a lot of people ended up like committing suicide too
Right.
in the program.
But that's what
So,
I'm saying. Like, it's like a perfect supernatural horror story.
mhm.
That you are like, whoa, this is not
Yeah.
right. But the thing is, the execution of it is very poor, I thought.
Yeah, I think so too.
And the art is all over the place on this one as well, because
Mhm.
there's some really good ones. Then you have this bearded, I don't know what that is, what's going on.
And the little girl.
And then you posted. I was trying to find it. Do you remember which page it was?
It was kind of in the first half. I just remember a little bit farther than where you're at, but
Yeah, but
kinda,
like, how is this a 15-year-old?
ooh, okay. I do remember another part that was really creepy. The main guy in the program was like in love with her, and I didn't know she was supposed to be 15. I thought she was younger, so I was like really creeped out.
She's under 18. So
Yeah.
And then the thing is, like, it's kind of weird because she predicts it that you're going to die,
Hmm.
and then he does die, but then he tries to like save her, and then he has this like there was this whole idea that you go into his head, and it was like first person, and you're supposed to be sympathizing with the pedophile kind of idea, like,
I know.
and then you're like, oh, I don't like this.
I'm gonna
Please
be,
stop.
I'm gonna be honest. I was like, I'm okay with this ending.
Same. But the thing is, I think like it's a good way though, because it's like a fear machine, right?
Yeah.
Like you are getting into a psyche, and then you are feeling that gross fear. Like it's very effective from that point of view. But then there's other point of view. You're like, oh wait, what? Like I said, great concept, great idea, but execution of it needs improvement. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, and then I wanted to kind of show this one as well. Like, look at this. Ugh,
Yeah.
gross. Like like there's like this cool arts over there that you are like, oh god, but no,
Yeah.
you don't.
I think that's why the art really works really well with it because it's very detailed pencil and pen work. I mean,
Right.
so yeah.
Yeah, which you don't see kind of a lot nowadays. Like
Mhm.
these days, it's not like this, as before.
Right.
But yeah, so a lot of hippiness going on over here. And I don't know what else to, and everyone's sleeping with everyone, obviously. That's okay. But third time in a row, he literally fucks his way.
That's what I'm saying. Is it in every volume? I don't know. It might be.
3 out of 3, and I was
Yeah.
like, come on now.
Yeah.
No magic. Does not use any magic. Like, which apparently his thing. He doesn't apparently use magic. I'm like,
Right.
really? Then
Yeah,
why is he
it's confusing because, like, in Justice League Dark and in the other animated stuff, you see him like summoning stuff. He looks like Doctor Strange, you know, and I don't see any of that in the comics. So I don't know if that comes later on, maybe.
right? I hope that's the thing, that maybe later our writers are like, oh, screw that, we're gonna make him use magic.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that kind of happens probably later on. But yeah, he doesn't. Because even in like the animated, the City of Angels or City of Demons,
Mm-hmm.
like demons or angels, just look it up.
Yeah.
Like he's like very good at it. Like
Mm-hmm.
even like in Newcastle, where he's supposed to be young, and his friend Chaz is with him, which he, by the way, Chaz is like his kick boy, like or whatever he kicks him around all the time.
Yeah.
Like he's just like very efficiently summoning magic and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't see any of that really, which, you know, in some cases I'm okay with, but I'm just kind of wondering when it's going to happen, I guess.
Right. I'm eagerly, anxiously waiting. You have all the other volumes behind you. Hopefully in one of them we get to see him.
I know, right?
Right. So it brings us to volume 4. This is a little bit
Mhm.
chunkier. I think this is when trades start to become chunkier, because all
Yeah.
this time there was 8 to 10 issues, but now this one, it takes us from 23 to 33 with stories, like a prose, like one issue, I guess you can call it. So this is kind of weird, back in the form of like 1 to 2 issue arc, even though it connects, it's an overarching.
Yeah.
What's your overall thought on this?
I actually really loved this one, and it was like one of my favorites. So it's getting me excited to keep going.
Right.
So yeah, like you said, there you have the main overarching like story, because you have what is it, the family man?
Right.
So you see like the serial killer guy.
Right.
And then in the middle, though, I noticed they added one little story by Garth Ennis, right?
No, Grant Morrison. 2
I'm
stories.
sorry, Grant Morrison. Yeah.
Grant Morrison and 1 issue by Neil Gaiman.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, which were both excellent.
Yeah.
Though I don't know why they're in the middle, why they're not.
Yeah. That's why I brought it up, because I was like, it didn't really make sense. And I was kind of hoping they were going to go back and explain the family man plot, which thankfully they did. But yeah, even though they were great, I didn't really understand why they were in the middle. So.
Right. And because I think the issue counting wise, they were in the middle. Maybe Jamie Delano had to take a break or something. But it was really jarring though, because it's like, oh, you were getting all this excited about the family man, and then it's like, wait, what? Where did he go? Yeah. Like, and once again, you would kind of start thinking like, oh, because John is a jackass, so he's not going to be participating in it.
Well, and the part that I really there was one part that I was kind of sad about, but I felt like was a good explanation was, and this is completely spoiler, how the family man, the serial killer, is like following him around everywhere, and eventually ends up killing his dad.
Right. Like, by the way, your video went away.
Oh, am I back on yet?
No.
How do I get back on?
Like, see when you go back into the Hangout, if you can click on the video. Now you're muted. Technical difficulty, guys. You think we're gonna edit it? We're not gonna edit it. Oh, you're back. Okay.
You're back. Cool. Sorry, somebody was trying to call me. So
yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. So to talk about his father.
Yeah. So his father gets killed by this serial killer that was obsessed with trying to find John, and I think he ends up not being able to find him, so he goes after his closest family member and then kills his dad.
And the thing is,
like, strange dad.
And this is actually a very cool story, though, because the whole family man, he gets that because he's still on the run. So after Fear Machine, he fucks those ladies.
Yeah.
Gets out of the problem.
Yeah.
Then he's a free agent again. Then he realized that, he's going to go meet up with one of his friends or acquaintances that, is pretty shady. And then he realizes that his friend was taken away to this. There's this whole weird that. I really love that bullshit kind of thing. The story where it's like literary figures comes alive, and his friend tries to insert himself into different stories, and they rebel, and then they take them away to this obscurity jail.
Oh, okay. Is that okay? Yeah.
That's the thing that happened, and I'm like, whoa, this is so I thought that was written by Neil Gaiman, because Neil Gaiman writes this kind of stories, and this is also something that kind of happens in one of in the Sandman stories. So I'm like, so this is written by Neil Gaiman. No, it's not. It's still written by Jamie Delano. But anyway, so once his friend is taken away, he later realizes that his friend was actually dealing with this this person who is a serial killer enthusiast, artifact enthusiast, and he was getting the artifact from a active serial killer who turns out to be a retired ex-cop, and in return, he was providing the serial killer with victims.
Yeah.
Which is creepy.
That blew my mind whenever he finally figures that out, and he's like, damn, like I just helped, this guy do this. And also too, the family man, the serial killer, he's named that because he goes after families, like men that have families.
Right. He goes after, and then he usually kills either all of them or leaves a survivor behind, which is a very realistic MO. And I'm like, this shit could happen. And I actually wanted to look, I didn't look it up though, but I should, to see that if there was a serial killer like that active in England at that time.
Yeah, because that was creepy.
That was creepy. So the thing is, so this story kind of gets a hit. Like he figures out that he actually meets up with this serial killer, and he provided the name because he
Mhm.
didn't understand what he was doing, and he kind of gave it, and he feels bad about it. Then cut to 2 issues by Grant Morrison and 1 issue by Neil Gaiman, and because we've been so far knowing him to be a passive, and I was fuming the whole time. I'm like, you are not going to go after them. Like after that, I was so sure that's what's happening.
Yeah, and I was trying to think. I couldn't remember exactly what happened to Neil Gaiman's because it was really beautiful art. I do remember that. I loved the art in it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was trying to find that. It's very like, I don't know, creepy.
Mhm.
So what it was happening, a homeless person who is dead, he's very cold, and he's trying to go hug people, try
Yeah.
to get their warmth out of them. And then I was so sure he's gonna fuck this guy too, but he didn't.
Oh yeah, and she wanted like a baby with. That was kind of weird. They were like friends.
Oh yeah, so his gay friend from volume 2, he's dead because all his friends is dead.
Mhm.
And one of his friend, so she's a lesbian couple, part of one of the lesbian couple, and she tries to have sex with him the same way Swamp Thing, and it's a callback.
Yeah.
Swamp Thing and Abby tries to do that, and that's when he says it again. I'm like, just ask me.
Mhm.
You know, so yeah. That's a thing that happened. And then yes, and then the homeless person just going around and trying to hug people because he says like, oh, I'm cold, like look at this, it's like this creepy art.
Yeah.
And then he kind of hugs him and he passes away, like
Which
like
I didn't understand. Like, did maybe John? I don't know. Maybe because he's a magic user, he was able to not die from hugging her. Or something.
right. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things I'm like, oh, I kind of like the idea that it wasn't explicitly said,
That's true. Yeah.
but it was there, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, but I'm like, okay, but once again, very passively was just there
Yeah,
because
that's
it
true.
happened to be there.
Yeah, because literally the little girl, was she on the roof or something?
Right, right.
Yeah, of that girl's apartment, and he just happened to be out there.
Yeah. And I, by the way, did not understand what was Grant Morrison trying to say because I don't
Yeah.
understand Morrison at any way. So
Yeah, so that was kind of where I was listening, and I'm like, I kind of blurred out on some of those issues because I was like, the one with Grant Morrison, like you said. I remember the Neil Gaiman one now that you're showing it, but
it's called Holding.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a very classic Neil Gaiman. Like this
Mhm.
is the kind of shit he writes. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
It was a good one for sure.
right. But yeah, so then we are back into the family man, and then
Mhm.
he actually kind of goes apprehends him and actually finally kills him, which to my surprise apparently he doesn't kill. I'm like,
Oh,
you don't?
yeah. I guess that's what you were trying. Yeah, it was kind of weird because you don't really have. It's kind of like with Batman, like, oh, he doesn't use guns or whatever, right? There was nothing that's saying like John Constantine doesn't kill people
Right.
until
Like,
this.
he kills people left. Like,
Yeah.
okay, he doesn't kill people with gun.
Mhm.
Like that. Like he was upset because he killed someone with a gun. I'm like, are you serious?
It's like, but dude, you let people die all the time.
People die all the time around you because
Mhm.
of you, and you're upset by this, by that you killed a serial killer.
Yeah.
Once again, didn't use magic. Like,
Yeah, that's true.
I
Yeah.
was like, what?
And
So
then, yeah. At the end, there was a weird. After they wrapped up Family Man, there was a weird thing with like a. Was it a demon that kept taking over things and ended up taking over a dog? Do you remember
yes,
the pit bull thing?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, that was a thing. And then also, he does have a very kind of nice one shot, like one issue after that wraps up because it comes back to his father and his childhood.
Oh, that's true.
And then so that was kind of nice, and also his his niece from which was in the volume 1, that
Mhm.
creepy ass serial killer thing where
Mhm.
his niece was kidnapped and all that. I was like, whoa, that is heavy as shit. So
So she was in one
you
of the cults, I think. Like from
sorry?
remember there was like a religious cult going around, and I
Right,
think
right,
she
right,
was
right.
in one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
Part of the religious cult that
Mhm.
said was part of, like, it's all connected. But
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, so that niece comes back with his sister, and and then the whole thing with his father, like that was, I thought that was kind of nice.
Yeah. I thought so too, but it was also kind of creepy because his ghost was like not able to rest, so it was following the girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then once again, he's like, oh, so where is he? Like, once again, uninterested participant.
Yeah.
In situation.
Well, so this is kind of also where it does like a flashback in time where it shows Constantine how it didn't show how he learned his magic. It just shows like, oh, when he was younger he used to do magic type of thing. But there's a messed up story that I kind of felt icky about because he kills that cat, and then like he was trying to get back at his dad for burning his magic books. You know, like a teenager like getting back at their dad, except he used like, I don't know, like blood magic or something.
So the thing is, like, what did he do though? That part I wasn't sure about. How
So-
did he curse his dad?
He did something to where the cat, he killed the cat, did some sort of magical thing to make it to where the dad would decay just like the cat was decaying. So the dad was starting to get really sick. Yeah. And the only reason he was able to slow down the process because he felt bad after, he was like, oh crap, it's actually working. So he goes and he finds formaldehyde from his school or something in the science room, and then decides to like process the cat so it wouldn't decay. And that's the only reason his dad's not like continuously decaying.
Yeah. Then and then his dad was literally burned, but his burned so hanging out. Oh God, that was John. Like, he's not a hero. He's not even a villain.
Like, when I think anti-hero, I think because like, Deadpool, like he'll like actively like help people if he's like, okay, well, yeah, I guess I'm gonna help this person. But with John, I don't get that vibe. He kind of is like, I don't know, I'm just not getting it at all. So I'm hoping like in later volumes they kind of explain it, but maybe not.
Yeah, and then there's what I say that I'm the greatest issue of all time, where people are just taking over dogs' body because they're apparently superior. I'm like, yo, now these people have some good ideas.
Because they were saying like the pecking order of the dogs, where it's like the top dog is the one, you know what I mean? Like the bulldog.
Right, there's like a bulldog who's like the top dog, and then so it's like a kind of mesh up of like werewolf but dog wolf, like were dogs and all that, which I thought was pretty interesting. And then I don't
huge fangs
in the last issue though. Oh, the last issue was once again some psychedelic bullshit where someone tried to kill him, and then he kind of goes into a Swamp Thing level psychedelic, under.
That was weird. He was going to the bathroom. Like his friend was with him. He went to the bathroom, and then like the bathroom attendant let him in because apparently his stomach was hurting. He goes in there, and then he comes out, and he can't understand anyone. It's like babbled to him.
Right.
He can't understand like English or anything. And then people were like burning electronics, I guess.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it was one of those, once again, like those 80s psychedelic bullshit in comic form. And I don't know, at one point I'm like, leave this to the pro, man. Like, Mr. Delano, just let Alan Moore do this. You're doing this right.
They're trying to do this like deep meaning, like symbolism, but that's really hard to pull off sometimes to make it actually like make sense, I feel like.
Correct. Yeah, and I was like, no. And then it ends with this, like, this kind of prose.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a pretty interesting story, but once again, people tried to rape him.
It was messed up, though.
I was like, God damn it!
So, I'll just kind of briefly explain it, I guess. So, this, was he like a mafia type of guy, or he was like some kind of hit boss or something?
Right. I think it's from the volume 1. Like, mafia boss kind of thing.
So, he starts off sitting in a hot tub with one of his like prostitutes, I guess, and the prostitute was supposed to trick John into allowing him to like get parts of like fluids from him so they could do a magic.
5 fluids like tears, semen, urine, blood, and I think feces.
Yeah, I don't know. And then so he's asking her like, how did you do it, right? And so she's explaining all the things she did, the story she told him. She was trying to get him to cry by saying like a personal story. She was he didn't flush the toilet. So she got that same thing.
That grossed me out so much.
Yeah. And then and then after the fact she gets this like little cocktail for him to take, and then come to find out her and John kind of like not necessarily teamed up, but she ends up like fessing up to him and saying, hey, this is what he wants me to do. And so he had already drank, like a week before, had drank all that stuff that she collected. And John hadn't actually used any magic on him. So he just drank all of that nasty stuff for no reason.
It's a cocktail of this. I was like, oh.
And so the only reason she got tears from John was because he's crying, laughing, realizing like, okay, yeah, you can let him drink this.
I think he didn't like, you know, which. So one thing I really loved about it, and I wish that they done it because it's a third person point of view of John. He's cool again. Like, you know, this, like when she's kind of explaining a third person, like, okay, his hair is like, you know, like, or like his persona and how he's like, he's not affected by anything. And, you know, she tells a horrible story about her life. And he's like, yeah, okay. You know, he has cricket, she got cricket sound from him, and he only cried. Like, this is how messed up he is. Like, he only cried because he's like, oh, he thinks that you cursed him. And it's like, what? No.
Yeah, he's like crying, laughing. This guy thinks he was turning into a frog, so he had to like sit in a hot tub and he was eating like maggots or something. So yeah, that was funny, but
so gross. That was the whole thing was gross. But it was also back to form of the dark horror thing.
Yeah.
Like, just people being gross, nothing. You know, so it was really good and thing, but I didn't quite understand. Like, I don't think they had an artist or something, because it was all just a story form. So it's like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad they didn't show art for that.
Oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, some things are left unseen. Better than unseen, you know. But I kind of like that she showed up to his door wearing a nun's habit, and he's like. He's like, oh, are you here for a stripping party? This is not that. Like, he sees through her right away.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cute. Like, it's like, oh yeah, he's kind of onto this. Like, it's just like, oh god, like it's one of those. I feel like he's one of those friends you kind of only call when you want to have a wild night, but then you regret it right away. Like,
definitely.
He's that friend.
Yeah.
So what did you give this on Goodreads?
I was gonna, I did a 4, but it would be more of a 4.5 for me. And then I have a little thing for my favorite shelf, and I put that on my favorites. So I really liked it.
Oh, okay. So you're putting it. Okay. So so is this the first volume that went into your favorite?
Yes, definitely. Out of all.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, I think like it's one of those things. I was like, damn it, you're bringing me. Like, you know, it's like I'm excited. Okay, what's going on? Ooh, this is really good. And then, like.
See, I like the progression it took, and I'm hoping. I guess that's what it was. It was making me hopeful. Like, I hope this goes more like this, and then I'll really like it.
Right. So that's like kind of like a good thing about it, though. And I kind of also liked the idea that, okay, this is a different kind of John Constantine than I'm used to. So let's just see how he progressed from that. So you said that you didn't finish volume 5.
No, I started probably about 50, 60 pages in. So I have some more ways to go.
So yeah, I mean, volume 5, Bethany, I read it this morning. Ask me what happened in it. I won't be able to tell you.
Okay.
You pretty much go. Okay, so here's the thing, though. Volume 5 is that, you know, this is where the number of issues really starts to get increased. So this is it's called the Dangerous Habits, and it goes from issue 34 to 46. But in issue 41, Garth Ennis takes over. So Jamie Delano, it finishes up in issue 40. And so this is like issue 40 to 46. So the main takeaway from this, those hippies are back. And you're like, why?
Oh, no. Does Garth Ennis take over that aspect of it or no?
No. So the thing is, the way it kind of ends with it, I mean, it's not necessarily, because you can read it and you're going to be like, okay, Faria didn't spoil anything.
Yeah.
A lot of the same psychedelic bullshit from like issue of volume 3 that happens, and he thinks he has cancer, but once again, I wasn't sure, does he have cancer or not, because that was also one of the important things. I'm like, this man chain smokes all the time. Show that aspect.
Yeah.
But no, it's kind of like one of those, right, you know, that there's something to do with future happens, like in future he has it, but it's never quite sure whether that's real or not. And then again, also they introduced the idea that he killed his twin brother in his mom's like, while they were still in mother's womb.
Well, okay, because in volume 4 they explain that the dad was resentful to him because she died giving birth to him.
Right. So, and that kind of comes back. That comes that some like aspects of that comes back. That kind of explained a lot as well. But once again, with all the psychedelic like stream of conscious bullshit, you're like, oh, okay, sure. Like, you just want it to be over.
I think that's why I liked volume 4 so much, because there wasn't a lot of that, and it was mostly just the plot moving, because you're like, okay, let's figure out what's happening with the family man serial killer, and that was a lot more interesting to me, I guess, because it moved pretty quick.
Right, and then there's also like a story from his childhood that I liked. That issue I really liked, like a story from his childhood, because he goes to stay with his uncle and aunt, and so there's like a lot of that too. That's kind of shows like he's like 5 or 6, and he's like a little shit, like like literal, like it's like, oh god. And then but then he comes back. So after the poisoning, so this is like right after that, like the poisoning, he finds these hippies again. I'm like, oh, again. But the thing is, like, and the art-wise is kind of all over the place once again. I don't think the art was never as good as the issue 1, the first volume. So it does kind of left with, he moves away from those hippies, because I guess like Garth Ennis is like, I ain't dealing with this shit. So Delano was kind of like, but then there's also some gross 2 issues where it's like a lot of weird, like, worst part of humanity bullshit goes on. So there's that. But what I really liked about it, though, so John Constantine, the idea of him came from Sting, he's supposed to be, and guess what? Sting.
Oh, wow.
So this is kind of like the first time they showed it, because he actually does look like that over here. So the artist for this issue, let me find out. So this is issue 37. And then the artist for it, it doesn't tell. Never mind. I can't. Sorry. There's a lot of them, and they don't tell who did and what. It's only for the cover art. So anyway, so once like for the first time, he actually looks like Sting.
That's so funny.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of good. But anyway, I was like so happy Jamie Delano is done. Because the idea, apparently, supposedly, in the next, Garth Ennis's part is supposed to be the best one, and we are set for like 4 of this thick volume of all of Garth Ennis's goodness that we're very excited to read. He goes from issue 41 to 83 with a couple of guest writer in the middle, I think, like just 1 or 2 issues. So I'm very excited for that. But yeah, volume 5, I mean, it's one of those things, like just an ending chapter.
Of Jamie Delano, I guess.
Yeah, Jamie Delano, but those hippies, man.
Well, and I was going to ask you, because I kind of went going into this blind. So as far as like the authors, does that mean, as far as is there not going to be any more Jamie Delano? Is it going to be more?
He does 1 more issue 84.
Okay.
So just 1 more issue that he does. But then, but then I'm like, oh, thank God.
Like, I think he did a good job introducing John Constantine, but I'm with you. I don't feel like I could read 300 issues of his stuff, and I'm sure people will hate that, but
no. I mean, yeah, and the thing is, like, it's one of those things, like, okay, I'm like, okay, this is an interesting take on John, and because before this, he was just, in Swamp Thing for like 12 issues, like I think like 4 or 5 issues, and then for everything that you were reading, or I think that was happening concurrently. So there isn't a lot to go on. All he was left with is like, okay, he looks like Sting, and he has magical power, which he's sometimes used, most of the time not. He's a bit of a dick and manipulative, and he feels sorry a lot about himself, but you don't actually get the feeling that he's really sorry. Like I think it's more of like he just does it. But
I saw a short interview from Jamie Delano talking about when he started writing Constantine, and how it was actually really hard for him. He kind of struggled with it. And kind of what you said, where it feels like he was using his voice through some of the politics of it. He even kind of said that, where he was explaining that it felt like he was so stressed about writing these to make sure they were good, that he kind of portrayed himself through John, I guess.
And that shows.
Yeah.
And that shows, because That was not the character, sir. Like,
yeah, he was like depressed. He was like going through these binges of drinking and all kinds of crazy stuff. So
yeah, and then he was like ladies' man, and that's
Mhm.
one of the things, like especially for male writers, a lot of the times like their characters are ladies' man all the time for no apparent reason, and I'm like,
Yeah,
why?
like
Like,
why do all the women like you for no reason?
yeah, why? There's a
Yeah.
lot of that too. But like I said, like I think like you as you mentioned as well, like it's like it left me hopeful. Like
Yeah.
I want to see what happens next, and
Mhm.
let's see how it goes. But thank God this is not 300 issues of this guy.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do it, but
Yeah. And to that point, though, another thing, like I don't know, did you feel like from volume 1 to volume 4 he changed?
I don't think overall that it was as cohesive as it could have been. Like volume 1, I felt like you pretty much knew what you were getting in the volume, but in 2 and 3, I was like, I don't even know where he's trying to go with his character, like his development, I guess.
Right, and then the thing is, like, it wasn't a story of John Constantine. It became a
Mhm.
story about other people,
Yeah.
and he was just there. And then volume 4, I think it came back again. Focus
Yeah.
became more about John, but then I didn't feel like volume 1 John and volume 4 John was different people. Like if
Oh,
you,
I see what you're saying.
like
Okay.
it was the same person. Like
Yeah.
he didn't learn anything.
Yeah. He pretty much just stays like we were saying, he stays on the outside kind of watching, which I don't know, maybe there's a reason to it, but I kind of doubt it. I think he's just pretty passive when it
Right. But anyway, I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. So let's see what
Mhm.
happens.
Yeah.
So we are going to be back, I guess, like with volume the next part 2, where we're gonna be
Mhm.
doing all of Garth Ennis's. And these are getting thicker. So are you a fan of Garth Ennis or
Um, I know that he did the Preacher series. I haven't read it yet. It's something I want to do like pretty much after I'm done with Constantine. I like darker comics, so I'm pretty excited to see where he's going to take the series. So,
right? So Garth Ennis and I have like a very love-hate relationship. Like,
okay.
like it's one of those things, like his stories are so dark. Like so
Mm,
dark, like humor in like the worst aspect of human. Like,
uh,
like making the worst aspect of human funny. It's
yeah.
like kind of his deal. His Punisher is out of this world excellent. Like
Mm,
you don't read anything of Marvel because it's a very standalone, and these are the three few ones that I have. It's out of this world, and as you mentioned, Preacher, Hitman, and now this, and supposedly this is one of his best work. So if
cool.
as a Garth Ennis fan,
Hmm.
I'm very excited
Okay.
about this. But he also has a very sometimes he becomes lazy, and the nuances are often gone, and
Mm.
you're left with a lot of gross, like it's like, okay, what the point of this?
Like, is it like kind of gory for no reason? I guess.
Not necessarily gory, but
Mm.
people are just gross, like, like mean for no reason. Like,
Oh, okay.
like for example, like the Family Man,
Hmm.
that was like, there was like, even though he was like a very gross character, like very, there was a reason behind it, if you know what I mean.
Okay. Yeah, that's
But
true.
imagine if that's taken away, like,
Yeah.
so Ennis sometimes tend to do that, but
Hmm.
I don't know. I all intents are like, everything I heard, this is one of his best work, and it's like this is where apparently John Constantine becomes cool, and this is the John
Okay.
Constantine that you see in every media supposedly. So I am really really on board for that, because as it
Yeah.
stands right now, I'm like, sir, you are weird.
He's weird. Yeah, I'm definitely not attracted to the drunk aspect because he goes on these drinking benders and all this other stuff, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
like
done with that.
if you're saying that it's Delano trying to insert himself,
Hmm.
yeah.
That's
So
what he said in the interview, so I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. Hey, if he said in the interview, that means it's correct. How
Yeah.
old is he now? He's like, how old was he then? I think he was in his late
Um.
20s when he wrote that.
Yeah, because when I looked at the interview, I don't know how recent it was, but he looked like 60s or so. So
Okay, yeah. So I mean,
yeah.
it was like an early part of the British invasion and stuff. But
Hmm.
so yeah, I mean, we're excited. So thank you so much for joining and watching the video. So we will kind of try to come back within like what are we thinking? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks time?
Yeah, 2 or so. I think we should be good. I mean, hopefully, if it's good, we'll read it quick. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's also another thing. Like, for all I know, Gurthit does not write that. So write that
Yeah.
way. So it's gonna be less of like stream of consciousness and more of like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, if it's explained a little bit, then I feel like I'll be happy with it.
Right. So we will kind of like we'll come back. So you can follow our channel, and like follow our regular show in the Omnibus Collectors group. The links below, and then also at the same time follow us on Instagram at Fangirlz Assembled, and on Twitter Fangirlz Live. We'll do our best to kind of keep interesting content up, just like this. But if there's other series that you want us to review, please let us know, and we'll read them and we'll talk about them. So thank you once again, and we'll see you in 2, 3, 4 weeks time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.